Okay. So everyone, I want to officially say hello and a hearty welcome to Richmond Torch's first meeting of the 2020-21 year. A very different year from any that we've ever had before, and we hope that we don't replicate this again anytime soon. The idea of gathering via computers and phones, we never would have thought of. But I want to say gathered we are, gathered nonetheless. And so could we have a rousing cheer, a round of applause celebrating that we are all here together?
Hello, yeah.
Here.
Greetings.
Yeah. So now that we got that out of our system, let me tell you very shortly, I'll be pushing the magic button that will have all of you silenced, that is on mute. And at that point, you'll be on mute for about 40 to 45 minutes. I'm hoping that you've all read the virtual meeting guide that our newsletter editor, Jane Stafford, developed and sent out Thursday of last week. If you familiarize yourself with it, you know already how our meeting process is going to work. But let me do just a quick recap so we're all on the same page. When the speaker, Mike, is presenting his program, no one else will be able to talk. We're going to have Q&A at the end. The way that you can ask questions as we go along is via the chat function. And there's a chat button in the middle of the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, then you'll be able to send a question. And your question should be directed to me. As a participant, I'm listed as Richmond Torch host. So when you have a question, if you direct it to me, then it'll go into a queue and we'll give it to Mike at the end.
It's up on the counter.
Just a second. I don't want to forget anything. Nothing out of order. We have a troubleshooter, Marilyn Erickson, who has been helping people already. If you should somehow get disconnected during the meeting and need to get back in and have a hard time, if you call Marilyn, and we've provided you her phone number, then she can help you by phone to get back in. And I'm hoping that you've all kept the login information, a copy of it handy, so that if you do get disconnected, you will have the link or the phone numbers at your fingertips. With that, I'm going to stop for a second. Does anybody have any questions that we need to deal with before we move on to the program? Okay, I'm going to push the magic mute all button. Okay, you should all be muted now. And I'm going to introduce our speaker, Mike Kerwin. Mike has been a Torch member for 3 years. He's a scientist who's worked in a variety of health-related fields over the years. He earned his BS in chemistry from the Illinois Institute of Technology, a PhD in inorganic chemistry from Michigan State, and a master's in public health from the Johns Hopkins University. In a career spanning more than 25 years with the federal government, he worked with OSHA in the Department of Labor, for the Department of Defense, with the Food and Drug Administration, and with the National Cancer Institute at the National Institutes of Health. And highlights of his career include serving as the initial Food and Drug Administration contact person for the Keepone spill in the James River back in the 70s, being on a team at the National Cancer Institute that created local coalitions nationwide to lobby local governments to ban smoking in public spaces. And that was a truly remarkable success nationwide. He conducted the scientific review of the National Cancer Institute's first broad agency announcement aimed at discovering novel technologies for detection and treatment of cancer. A similar approach to the Defense Department's famous DARPA program that initiated the internet, and it was DOD and DARPA that initiated it, not Al Gore, he likes to point out. And he worked as part of a National Institutes health team to create the Women's Health Initiative. It's a 17-year epidemiological study of women's health issues, such as hormone replacement therapy, osteoporosis, heart disease, and cancer. So you can see he's touched on a lot of health fields that have impacted all of our lives. So now remember everyone to use the chat function to send questions, and Mike will field them at the end. And I guess take it away, Mike. And you'll have to, yeah, okay.
I did. I just was waiting, and it takes a little bit to do that. So I'm going to switch those over. No, why isn't it me? I see you, Pat. That, no. Something is wrong here. Full share screen. Here we go. All right.
There.
There we go. Okay. Come on. All right.
I see what you're saying.
And I'm going to get rid of this. So I have some samples, but I will show those later. Basically, I'm had a fascination with glass for existing for like more than 50 years. And I discovered it when I was in graduate school and found out that glass is just a truly amazing thing. And going to run through a lot of history here to get to some of these things. So this is basically what I'd like to talk to you about is what is glass, and it turns out that's pretty complicated. Then there's a history of glass in the human aspect of things, and that goes back a lot farther than you might think. And then if you want to find out more, it turns out we have a very wonderful and complete resource very close to us. I'll be telling you about that. And then the last thing is something that fascinated more than people just everywhere across the world is that some of these contemporary glass artists are doing some really amazing things with glass. So starting out, what is glass? And this is a part of the complications that you see. On the left side here, this is a glass. It could be a container. It could be a drinking material. It's basically a soda lime glass. This is basically what it's from. And it's silicone on oxygen. And that's what you see in the structure to the right of it here. But if you look closely at the structure, you're going to see that there's no regular pattern. There are a bunch of loops, and they're different sizes, and they connect different ways. Because part of what glass is that it's non-crystalline. And the opposite of that is the quartz crystal, which you see on the right. And again, there is a structure for the quartz, and all of the little dots are very orderly. They're in these little hexagons. That's a crystal, and that shows up in this formation of the quartz. So glass in this case is non-crystalline. It's called an amorphous solid, but it's not really a solid, and we'll see that next. Basically, the ones that we're familiar with the most are silica-based, but that's not all that it incorporates. And it's also considered to be a metastable state for matter. And that's curious because they're also using glass in vitrification aspects to hold low radioactivity solids for literally thousands of years. So the metastable is way beyond the lifespan. So over on the right with the quartz, this is a very stable state of matter. And this is what you'll see sometimes in the jewelry that they use quartz, and they can detect that by the regularity of the crystals and the refractions that you're going to see. So this is where we're trying to get a handle on what is glass. And it's not something that follows the type of rules that many of us are used to. Like when I first started studying science, we looked at phase diagrams and we recognized that things were solid, things were liquid, things were a gas. And then somewhere just about that time, we started entering plasmas as a phase of matter. And plasma is once you've ionized something and heated it to a very high temperature. Okay, so a solid, of course, a diamond. This is just carbon in one of its forms. It could be ice, and that's one of the most common things that we think about when we think about phase diagrams, because we have to deal with a lot of these phases. So a liquid is water. Water is in the solid form is ice, and in the gas it's steam. So those aspects of things. This is neon. It's a neon tube. You see these, maybe not so much anymore, but in our lifetime we were used to these. That's an ionized gas inside. It's a plasma. So that's one state of matter. And the last one here is air. And that's what you'll see when you look outside the windows. So these are four generally accepted phases of matter. It turns out that as a scientist, I have to be aware that there's more. And the next part is what is glass? Glass is none of these. It's not a solid, it's not a liquid, it's not a gas, it's not a plasma. It's just an amorphous solid. It's something that you can be shaped, and it's something that can be colored, and we'll see that in a bit as we go on. But it's just a lot of what it's not. Now, talking about some additional phases, we've entered the world of the quantum, and this is the Bose-Einstein that you read about probably last year when they finally discovered the particles. But there are like 20 phases of matter that occur in the quantum phases. So that's not for here. That's another talk for somebody who's more complicated on that part of things. But what are some of examples of glass that you might be familiar with? Well, some of these glasses are naturally occurring, and the most common ones are the volcanic glass. And if some of you may have gone to the Science Museum last year, at one point in one of the rooms, they were showing 5 different forms of volcanic glass, and they looked entirely different. I've just picked 2 of those to show you, and we'll see examples of those in a minute, because of their naturally occurring aspects and the uses that they've been put to over time. And then there's things like meteoric glass. This is when one of these rocks from space crashes into the earth, and you'll see what can happen with that, which is similar to another of the man-made forms, which is the first one listed there, which is trinitite. Trinitite is what occurred when the Trinity explosion out in Alamogordo at World War II, the end of it there, the first atomic bomb created some of this glass. Soda lime glass is the one that you're probably most familiar with, that you'll see around the house. I'm sure you'll have drinking glasses, you have food containers. Very common, very easy to work with. Then there's lead glass. That's a very useful type of glass when you want to do sculpture work, and it's very easy to manipulate into complex forms, and it's very, very attractive. Then some of the other things that I've run into in doing the research for this talk is that there's such a thing as amorphous metal, which meets the definition of glass, and you'll be surprised to see that. There's pyroceram, which was accidentally found a while back, and it's also known as Corningware, but that's considered to be a glass. So glass occurs in many forms, and it's all around us, and that's part of the fascination that I have for it. So the volcanic glass, there's exactly where it comes from. It's a little bit of a blurry picture, but you get the idea. It's a lot of heat, molten things, and some of the things that come out, the first one is pumice. And this is pretty amazing because it looks like a rock. It's actually glass. And the neat thing about it is it floats on water. It's also very light because when it's formed in a very gaseous uh, location, and it has a lot of air bubbles. And that's why you see the holes in it. That's what makes it light. But in the same volcano, we also can get obsidian, which is this hard glass that you see down at the bottom. And obsidian is one of the glasses that was very important down through history. The natives, indigenous peoples in Americas used obsidian for blades, and they used it for arrowheads and spearheads. It's very sharp. It flakes off, makes very, very sharp points. It's actually still used in some surgical instruments. The pumice has common uses for many of us in our past history. If you remember such a thing as lava soap comes from pumice. It ground up, and it makes a very good abrasive substance. And this is a meteoric glass. This is what happens when a meteor slams into the earth, generates so much heat that it can fuse things together into this intricate pattern. This one actually comes from Moldavia, and that's why it has the name. And this one is very similar to what we man-made created in Los Alamos, 1945. If you look on the right here, you'll see this is atomic glass. This is trinitite. At one point in time, it was illegal to own that because it is radioactive still, and they collected most of it and buried it. There are some samples that are available that were collected before the government stepped in about that, and the radioactivity by this time has decayed so that it's low level, but it's still radioactive. Surprisingly, a lot of things are radioactive that you might not consider, but again, that's another story. So these are some samples that I picked out to show you. The first is the soda lime glass. And if you've traveled any in Europe or even New England, some of these places where the people have been for a long time, you'll see windows made out of panes, and they have this little blob in the middle. Well, glass, one of the nice things about it is that it can be manipulated with air. And so this is a hand-blown piece of glass into a mold, and that thing you see in the middle is where the blowpipe was, and that's what makes it spread out like that. Now, lead glass is the next item here on the right, and this is something that can be carved, and you'll find this a lot in very exquisite forms. I will give you one piece of warning that if you travel with any of this lead glass, be aware that the X-ray machines at the airports will detect it and can cause you to miss your flight. It did to us one time, bringing back a lead glass Celtic cross from Ireland. So something about the nature of it and the contents, they can put traces of different metals in. We'll see more of this when we want to get colors into the glass. And the next one is the one that I find very surprising. This is amorphous metal, which meets the definition of glass. It's oftentimes formed by vapor deposition, which is what we do a lot of in making the computer chips that we use very frequently and we're using right at this moment to view this display. And then, of course, the pyroceram, the Corningware. I grabbed this picture. We actually use these frequently. It's very wonderful material, but not just the covers are glass, but the bottom part is too. It's a combination of glass and ceramics, and very good temperature stability. You take it out of the oven and stick it under the water tap and it won't break. It's a pretty amazing stuff. So what have we done with glass down through history? And in this, I'd like you to think that we've gone through the Stone Age. Think of Fred Flintstone and maybe the Neanderthals and beyond. We got it into the Wood Age, where we could found out how to burn things. We moved on to the metals, which the first one we labeled was bronze. And then we moved into the Iron Age, and we moved on and on and on. And right now, we might well consider ourselves to be in the age of glass, because glass is replacing a lot of the things that we have used in the past for different aspects of our life. And it used to be that the telephones and telegraph all used copper wire. Now, most of the information is transferred over fiber optics, which are glass. So well beyond the windows and the windshields and everything around us, we could very well consider this to be a glass age. So the history of human use with glass starts about 3,500 years ago. And the basic process for making glass is that you take dry ingredients, such as silica, which is silicon dioxide, and you also know it as sand. We mix it with an alkali, which is the lime part, the soda lime glass. Heat it to 2,500 degrees, so you got to be very cautious with it. Then you cool it slow enough so that it cracks, but fast enough to prevent crystals from forming. And that's why many of the art objects that are made with glass are blown and then put into ovens so that it can cool slowly and result in the beautiful objects that we get out of it. Then we've added down at the bottom, you can put stabilizer in. You can also add coloring agents. There's just a lot of things that go into the glass that we're going to wind up seeing. You heat this up and presto changeo, it goes from solid, it goes to glass. And some of these objects I've shown you here, these are things that are historical objects. They've been around nearly 4,000 years in glass. Initially, it was pretty small because they didn't have the tools and the techniques, but as we've gone along, it became such a versatile object that we made more and more things out of it. So even though these look like pottery, all of these are examples of glass. And I'll show you where you can see more in a minute. This is some pictures that were taken from the Pompeii exhibit that was at the Science Museum a year ago. And these have been buried for close to 2,000 years. And you can see the glass has been, although it's considered metastable, it certainly has lasted. These are objects that the Romans built. And this is typically of this greenish color of the glass that they did. Those are for, excuse me, these are containers, and it's also decorative. Even at that time, these are pieces of jewelry that were discovered at Pompeii, and this is another form of glass. And this is the chemistry, and I'm a chemist by training, so this is interesting to me, and I wanted to share that with you. Most of these different objects have different colors, as you can see, all the way from this purple, we got to this bone color. An interesting one is this yellow one that's made with uranium, and it probably has some low level of radioactivity, but most of the uranium that's around is not radioactive, but it does have interesting chemical properties. And to me, it's fascinating to take the periodic table and compare it with the different objects that you have up here, and it shows you where the colors are coming from, and it has to do with the small amounts that they put in with the glass, make it something more attractive, make it something that you want to have around and to use. Then we also use glass in just such a wide variety of things because of all the features that it has that are so useful. It's strong. You have a windshield on your automobile. You want that to be strong to resist the wind that's coming, the rocks that might come your way. and glass fills that bill. They use it for the airplanes, and you know that there's a lot of pressure that it has to put up with. They use it in the space um, objects that we send up, the space capsules. So glass is strong, it's hard, it has some elasticity, although we generally don't see that part of it so much. Um, it has good optical properties in that the visible light that human beings can see, they're transparent with most glass. Or you can add things to it to make sunglasses, or you can make sunglasses that fade in and out with the sun. So very, very good properties that we have for it. It's shock resistant, it's corrosion resistant, and it's this part, the corrosion resistance, that has to do with using it in the vitrification for storing low-level radioactivity objects so that they don't get into water and have things corroding away. It resists that. It's electrical insulator. If you recall in days past when we had all these electric wires strung around all over the place, they were all attached to wooden poles, basically with a glass insulator. And I don't see an example of that they have here, but that is something that we used to see. Glass is heat absorbent. That's one of the reasons we have some problems with people getting stuck in cars, and you get temperature rises there. But just look at the objects that you have here. You've got your cell phone, your eyeglasses, your rear view mirror, light bulbs, another thing that's becoming obsolete, all these containers that you have, marbles. Many of you played with marbles, I'm sure. This may be an insulator, it may be a paperweight, which is something of interest to me. Cooking, glass blocks that I'm sure that you've seen houses that have that, objects that are art objects, and measuring cups. We all use these all the time. And now I would like to bring you into the parts that are really fascinating. This glass as art. And this is something that you may well recognize. Frank Lloyd Wright was an architect, but he liked to use and control just about everything in the environment that he was creating. And this is a piece of glass from one of his houses. And you can see how he's integrated different colors and different pieces of art into this glass. This is a typical thing that we associate with someone who has ingenious ideas for how to go about doing things. And another one that I'm sure you're familiar with is Louis Comfort Tiffany. And about 100 years ago, a little bit more, he was a decorator of note and a glass artist extraordinaire. And this is one of his typical examples. This is an electric lamp. He's got his dragonflies on here. He liked to create those in different colors of glass. He did stained glass windows. He did just about any object you can think of because of his decoration. And one of the unique things, I think, is he had special formulas that he created for each of the different colors for the glass that he used, and all these little pieces that are put together here. And when he died, he left in his will that the formulas for all those should be burned and destroyed, so nobody else could do that, could recreate what he had done. Really marvelous pieces. And this is the place where I would suggest that if you want to learn more about glass, this is very nearby. It's in Norfolk, Virginia. It's the Chrysler Museum of Art. And they have some 10,000 pieces of glass, including some by the artists that I'll go about showing you here in a few minutes. But Chrysler was a son of the actual fellow who made the Chrysler automobile and made a lot of money. And one of the son's favorite things to do was to collect glass. So they have a lot of pieces of Tiffany glass there, rooms full of it. they have a Chihully sculpture that may or may not be on display any one particular time. And they have a lot of the historical slides I've just shown you in there, and showing how glass has progressed over time from the ancient times up into the modern times, and many of the things that you can do with glass. So this is not very far away. You may be able, if you have membership in the VMFA, if you have a traveling membership, I think we get in there for free, and we've visited there several times. Now, you cut up to the more modern times, and this is some of the contemporary artists. There's two that I've picked that are my favorites, and one of them is someone I think that you all recognize, Dale Chihully, and this is one of his typical creations. It's a little fuzzy. Don't worry about that so much. You get the idea just from this image. He does these snake trees, if you will, some of which have an additional feature that they're made out of neon tubes and they light up at night. But he does this, and he's exhibited all over the world. And we have been fortunate to follow some of his exhibits across this country, all the way from Florida out to San Francisco and places in between. He's done exhibits in Italy, which is the home to a lot of glass making historically. He's done it in Israel, and well, it's another story, but he's done some interesting things with materials other than glass. So this is one of the exhibits that was here, and these are one of the characteristic pieces of Chihully. These are large, about 3 feet in diameter, glass sculptures that are blown in his workshop out in Washington State. And he puts these pieces together, and you just can see the colors and just the texture of the material. This is very similar in small scale to what's in the ceiling at the Bellagio Casino in Las Vegas, where there are 40,000 pounds of glass attached to 10,000 pounds of steel framework in the ceiling of that, in the lobby of that casino. It's one of the few places too where you can purchase Chihully sculptures pieces right there in the shops that are there. This is another of the classic examples of things that he's done. Creates these huge balls, and that's a full-scale rowboat. Gives you some ideas to the scale. Many of you may have seen these down at the VMFA when he was here again a couple years ago. But these balls are like, some of them 3 feet or more across. So they're very heavy, very large. And at one point, Chihully went to Venice, Italy, and he took some of these balls and he threw them out of the boat and into the canal and let them float around for a while. So pretty unique fella. This is another type of a tree, and I believe this is his workshop out in Washington State. And he likes to make these sculptures. He does a lot of work with botanical gardens across the country. And this next one is an example of something that he's done where he's integrated the glass sculptures with the lily pads in this case, or with many of different kinds of things. Here at the VMFA, he left the red glass spears in the reflecting pond. That's one of the characteristic pieces. But he is just a widespread thing. This is an example of another type of glass that we first saw at the University of Akron, where they were instrumental in development of fiberglass, and they do a lot of work. This is one of his trees that's made out of fiberglass. So it's a different kind of a sculpture, but it's just another way that art can be used, and glass can be used as a medium for art. And there's a better picture of our fellow at a slightly younger age. With being with the one eye, he's not able to blow the glass and get the three-dimensional aspects of it. So he has a team, and I have a book that shows some of his team members at work. He designs things on 2 dimensions, and then he sets his team to work, and they generate these mighty sculptures that you see. And here is the neon tree that he created, and the red glass spears similar to what we have here. And this is just really unique. First time we saw that, it was in San Francisco when he did this, but he's done more work with neon sculptures indoors as well as outdoors now. But again, the yellow are just glass rods that are filled with an ionizable gas for the plasma, but it's the glass that's the continuing feature. And the next person I'd like to introduce you to, if you haven't met, is Luke Jerem. And this is a glass blower and exhibition artist. He does a lot more than just glass, and he does things at very large scale in some of his exhibitions, if you take a look and go to his website. But the thing that really caught my attention here was he has a penchant for science. So he has designed and constructed some objects that represent biological creations. This is one of the sculptures that he's holding. And this one is one that's responsible for us being here on the computers. This is his rendition of the coronavirus, and it shows all of those coronas sticking out from the thing. He does these sculptures, you saw that they're about the size of a basketball or a little bit larger. But normally to see this, you'd have to use an atomic microscope because it's a virus, it's very small. So this gives more of a macro scale, gives people some idea. And the fact that some of these objects, although they're terrible and they're results of what they cause problems for us, that there is a natural beauty in the structure of these things. This is another one that I saw down at the Chrysler Museum. This is HIV, and this is his rendition of what that virus looks like. And it is helpful to see some of these things because normally viruses, for most of us, we never will see one in our lifetime. They're invisible, but this is something that really reached out. This is just an example. He has this gallery of these different objects that he has created. I wanted to put this picture here to show you. It gives you some idea of the scale with the people and the top here. But all these are microorganisms that he has rendered into glass to make them into works of art. And this is a phage. This is a virus that attacks a bacteria. And so in a way, it's a friend. And this is another of his kinetic sculptures, his science-related ones. Each of these, if you could see it, is a small globe, looks like a light bulb. And inside, there's a metal post and an object on top of it that looks like semaphore flags, that one side is white, one side is black. And it was very important because when they created this to demonstrate that light has matter, has materials, properties to it, because when they evacuate the bulb, shine light on it, the black absorbs the light and the little flags spin around. So what Luke has done is he's not created a vacuum in all of these. So there's different levels of air pressure, or uses nitrogen inside. So they rotate at different speeds. And when the sun hits it, it just, all of these go into motion. And there's like hundreds of these bulbs that he puts together in these multi-story sculptures. So basically, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I have some examples here that I'll show you, But this is a place where you can learn more about glass if you're of interest. The Wikipedia is just a wonderful reference, a lot of pictures that you can get. The Chrysler Museum in Norfolk, I can't say enough about in terms of glass, that it's just a place I go and I could just stay there for a while. Then there's Dale Chihully, there's Luke Jerem, the glass artist that I featured. Some of the images I've shown you are from the Getty collection. And with glass, you can see different forms. Just about any museum around the country will have that. There's an excellent collection of glass in the American History Museum up in Washington, D.C. And I know that Pat has interest in the glass that comes from West Virginia, and there are several pieces there. And I have some of my own that I've purchased there. My own collection is mostly of paperweights. And that's what I'd like to show you a couple examples of here, and then answer the questions that you might have. So let's get back to here. Where are we? Oh, it's there. Where am I? Here. Okay. Oh, I know what I have to do. I have to stop sharing. There we go. Okay. So one of the things that got me interested in glass a long time ago was an object like this. This is a glass paperweight. And if you look on the bottom, the seal on there, this is actually from Murano, which is in Italy, right near Venice. It's an island. And this is one of the places that's famous for making glass. And although this object is attractive in many ways and it represents a lot of work, the basic function of it was just what its name implies. Before we had air conditioning, people would open windows and they had pieces of paper. And this is what they used to hold the paper down. That's why it's called a paperweight. And one of the other ones that I purchased was this one. And this one is similar in respect, but this one weighs 5 pounds. Most of them weigh just at 1 pound. And I was amazed to find out that in the days before double hung doors, they used to worry about the doors opening and closing in the wind. This is a doorstop. If you can imagine something this attractive being used just to hold a door open, that's what it's all about. And the last thing I'd like to show you, one of my prize collection books, something I didn't throw away. This is Chihully. He came to Washington, D.C., to Corcoran a couple of times, and I got to hear him speak. And where is it here? Yes. That's his signature. He gave me a personal invitation to come and visit his studio the next time I'm in Washington, D.C., or Washington State. And there's just amazing things that he has on display there, including the Glass Museum, which is across the freeway from a courthouse, which was an old train station. But the courthouse lobby is filled with Chihully sculptures. It's just truly amazing. Yes. My wife wanted me to let you know that the lecture we went to with Chihully was for my birthday. That's when we were still living up in the DC area. And one of the amazing things that you can do up there, we sort of miss, because most of the things up there are free. The museums, some of these you pay for, but you get more people coming and they have more attractions than we do, but still it's only an hour and a half away and we don't have to worry about the traffic. So now I'd like to see if I can answer some of your questions.
Oh, okay, now. All right, can you hear me now, Mike? Let me see.
Yeah, I unmuted me. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay, a question from Marshall Marcus. How is stovetop glass made?
Well, they mix a bunch of stuff together and they heat it up.
It's funny.
A lot of this stuff is patented. Um, I don't have the answers for all of that, but heat has remarkable, or glass has remarkable heat stability features to it, and it's controlled by the other ingredients that you add to it. So I haven't looked into that. I'm sure if you did the wiki search, you could find something out about it, but it's just another amazing use for something that's considered to be amorphous and metastable, and yet we rely on it for so many different things. I'm amazed.
Okay, from Melissa Marion. She says her favorite Tiffany's are the windows at the chapel in the cemetery in Petersburg. There you can get so close to see the various thicknesses. It was used to get almost three-dimensional sculptures. Would you comment on those?
They are truly amazing. We visited there. We've seen those. The stained glass windows are a feature that you'll find a lot of different places. One of the things about glass and stained glass and other things didn't come to me until we went to Ravenna in Italy. And there we saw that they had made a lot of portraits, a lot of art objects out of ceramics. And ceramics can be glass that they use, those little pieces that they paste together. But they were telling us that the object of doing that was that it was art for the ages. And in that respect, because glass is so stable, the colors will last for a long time, and it just will remain. It captured the beauty of something, and you can make simpler mosaics using glass like that. So yes.
Can I jump in with a hi, Pat. Mike, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for that. I don't want to be that guy, but after living over a decade in New Mexico, several decades back, I just need to point out that Los Alamos, which you identified with the explosion, is way up in the mountains. It was a little secret city that was invented for the Manhattan Project to complete their work, and was a remarkably well-kept secret through the war. It was unbelievable that they could keep that secret in New Mexico and do that work, with all those people coming and going. But the explosion, the Trinity site, is in fact down near Alamogordo,
Yes.
some distance away. It's very close to the White Sands dunes, the White Sands Monument, which is all gypsum dunes out in the middle of nowhere. And there is some speculation that some of the glass that was generated there had a bit more gypsum in it. It wasn't right in the gypsum field, but there's enough of it blows around that may have impacted the glass that was created there. But I just wanted, you had it labeled as Los Alamos, and I thought maybe that was worth noting. Sorry to be fussy, but.
No, well, Los Alamos is where they generated the bomb that created the glass at Los Alamos, absolutely.
Right.
And it was a time when you could go out there and collect it. That's why there are some examples in the gift shops that you can still buy of this trinitite.
Okay, so another question came from Lynn Bernard, and she mentions checking times for live glass blowing at the Jamestown National Park that they're doing there. I guess, Lynn, what you're saying is that our members might check on that those times to see the glass blowing. And then she says that Mannequin Episcopal Church and other older churches in this area can demonstrate the viscous nature of glass.
Yes, I'm fascinated by glass, and just anywhere it is. There is glass blowing in Jamestown, I know, but that would be sort of limited, and in terms of what they were doing it for the time. If you wanted to see something more recent, right across the street from the Chrysler Museum is a glass blowing place that you can watch exhibits, and they're doing things of our time.
Send that.
Okay, there's a question from Paula Dennison. How can one share this presentation with schools?
Well, you are recording this.
Yeah.
That is one possibility. And I have given talks. The talk I gave before on the FDA, I also gave it at the Science Museum. And if anybody's interested, I'd be glad to share, because it's fascinating to me about the glass. I just love it. So happy to share.
Okay. Well, I have a question of my own about the various and sundry things that are used to color glass. I grew up in a home in San Antonio that was built in 1890, and the shade for the chandelier in our dining room was called oxblood glass, and it was a very dark, almost burgundy red. And my mother got so curious about the name of it that she had it evaluated and was told that that glass had indeed been colored with ox blood. That's a pretty unusual thing. What are maybe some of the other unusual things that are used to color glass?
I would be a little reluctant on that one. Glass is created at 2,500 degrees, and at that temperature, any sort of organic material would not be stable. I would suspect that it's made with something like cadmium, because I did show you that one slide with all the different colors of it.
Mm-hmm.
Glass has got to be something that's inorganic to be in there.
Okay. All right. There's a question from Nancy Hodder. Currently in Stanton, there's a glass blowing shop called Sunspots. And you can view glass blowing demos there. I guess that's just a comment for the membership. And then Paula Dennison is asking, where is the genetic mobile displayed? I'm sorry, the kinetic.
There is one of those in the Chrysler Museum down in Norfolk. It's in a stairwell in the back, and it actually hangs down about 2 stories. That picture was not at the Chrysler Museum. It was someplace else, but it demonstrates that it's the same sculpture that he has done. And this Luke Jerram is just amazing. He's done some really large creations too. And I think right now he's doing a Corona 15 or COVID 15 or 19 exhibit in Amsterdam, which is outside. But he's a very talented artist.
Are there any other questions? In fact, if y'all want, you can unmute yourselves now and maybe ask Mike a question without using the chat, since the talk is over.
Hi, this is Walter Van Eck, and I live only a few miles from the Chrysler, so we get to go there more often than most. In addition to their extensive glass collection, they also have a laboratory or a shop, an artist shop, with several glass furnaces, which you can visit at all times, and they're actually making glass as you watch. That's a fascinating thing to do. The other thing I wanted to mention is that except for special exhibits, all entrances to the Chrysler Museum, including the glass laboratory, are without cost and have been for a number of years.
Good.
There are some glass blowers in Richmond, and there is a shop called the Glass Spot where they will facilitate your work with glass. They have all the materials that you need there. It's on Lombardy Street, I think. Just look it up in the phone book.
This is Lynn, and I wanted to comment on the Venetian boat series that was shown with the glass in the rowboat.
Yes.
So there was a national quilt show that was featured here in Richmond. And the winner of that show actually did a version of that particular piece that she had taken picture of and possibly got a permission from Chihully to do. She then took the picture and blew it up and dyed each individual section of her quilt using batik methods, and then pieced everything together. And no surprise, she won the top prize for the quilt show for the entire country that year. So he truly is inspirational across all the arts.
Anyone else have any questions or comments for Mike?
Mike, this is Pete.
Yes.
I would just like to comment on just a wonderful presentation. I'll tell you, first of all, you were courageous to be the first to attempt this, and you pulled it off extremely well, and you deserve our plaudits.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for doing that. And I've been tipping a glass, let me see if I can get you to see it, all night, okay? And in this glass is some bourbon. And I went to, on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail a couple of years ago. Now let me see if you can see this. This is a Glencairn glass from Maker's Mark Distillery, which has just unbelievable Chihully creations on its campus. So if you ever get the opportunity to go out there, I would encourage you to do that. But thanks again for a wonderful presentation. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, let me call your attention to the fact that when we have been meeting in person at the cathedral, we have usually cut off by now, so that the ladies could start cleaning the church dining room at 8. When we're doing these virtual meetings, we're going to have our meetings lasting until 8:30, so that there can be discussion without that earlier cutoff. We've had some complaints over the years that there really was not enough time for Q&A and for people to talk to each other. So we're going to have these meetings going and open until 8:30. So anyone who wants to hang around here and talk to your chums, you're able to do so. But I do want to remind you of two things.
Peter,
I'm sorry?
Peter's still in the center.
Oh. It's
Goodbye, Peter.
I'm going to move back to the gallery view, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I want to be sure that you watch for your September newsletter, which will have information about the other upcoming programs. And we'll also be communicating to you through the newsletter anything that we find out about the COVID-19 environment and how that might affect the rest of our club year. As you know, if you've been reading your newsletter, we have programs scheduled through December. And when we get more information on what the regulators allow, what the church, our wonderful host church will allow, then we'll be able to start planning from January on. But right now we are scheduled this way through December. And our next meeting will be the first Tuesday in October, October the 6th, when we will have Art Gunlicks talking to us about the way elections are held around the world. You do know we have an election coming up here fairly soon, right?
No, never heard of it.
Where?
Okay, well, the meeting is now, the meeting is officially ended, but as I say, this site is open till 8:30, so if any of you want to hang around to talk with each other, you're welcome to do so. And I do thank you all for attending. And let's give Mike one more round of applause. Okay.
Pat, I just would like to add, Zoom itself has indicated that they may be implementing some additional security measures coming in September. So it's possible that the instructions may change a little bit for our next meeting. It's possible you may have to enter a password. We don't know the details yet, but they are worried about that, and they are trying to make sure that the privacy of everybody is protected during these meetings.
That's right. And that's the kind of thing that we'll be letting you know about in your September newsletter. So stay tuned. And if you have ideas for future programs, or if you have any comments on how what we've done tonight can be improved, please let me know or anyone else on the board know. Thank you all very much.
I do want to say one thing.
Thank you, Pat.
That there is, I've been on other Zooms that you have to put in a code. Some say that's called a passcode. Someone said password or whatever. So that's really not very new.
What Zoom is, that's probably the individual organizations. The thing is, Zoom is going to start requiring it.
Okay.
So we do have, one of the ways that the email attachments to log in with one tap, that already has your password and the meeting number preloaded so that you don't have to go through and figure out all the different numbers to put in. And that may or may not be the case when Zoom develops their own passcode.
Hey, Pat,
Yes.
this Saint.
Oh, yes.
I've been wanting to say, I think this meeting has been fantastic. That
Yes.
Torch Club with the internet has been struggling because you can go on to Wikipedia and get a lecture. This has been a superb presentation, and I thank you. I also hope that it can be shared in the future with schools and the rest of the world. And I wonder if this is not really the best future for Torch Club.
Well, there are
And
a lot of
you're not
people.
You can't answer it tonight, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say there are a lot of people who say the in-person camaraderie that we have at our dinner meetings is a prime reason they are there. Certainly,
Of course.
yes, certainly, though, the information that we all get, and I will say I've been doing this for 6 years now, and my months are not the same when I don't have a first Tuesday torch meeting to go and learn something in. It is our plan that all of these presentations are being recorded, and they will go into a virtual and online library.
Oh, fantastic.
And we will be sending out links to that library to all of our members. We are going to be asking that you don't share those things unless you get special permission. But for schools or other reasons, there are a lot of ways that we can share, or there. IATC at the top, I'm not sure whether George Conklin is still with us or not. IATC at the top is building a national online library where they're hoping that individual clubs like we will deposit copies of our programs, and then they would be available to other clubs. So there's a lot of that kind of work, knowing that online learning is a thing that becomes available almost in an unlimited way. And we plan to participate in that IATC project. We just don't have a lot of detail about it. But thank you for your comments, Saint.
I don't think anybody has the detail, but the future clearly is going to be a much broader school worldwide.
Yeah.
On the internet.
So Saint,
Yes.
speaking as an an IETC board member, I can tell you that the Torch Foundation, which is the not-for-profit arm of this, has gone through and said that they would sponsor the pro accounts for any clubs that were interested in having their meetings broadcasted through Zoom. So that's really exciting. And we really do. From the beginning of this pandemic, we have been talking about how we can grow the club, maybe even have virtual clubs as opposed to meeting in public. And if we've got somebody from Norfolk and somebody from Durham, North Carolina visiting with us tonight, was to say that we couldn't have somebody from San Antonio, Nebraska, or even Canada. So there are a lot of exciting options. And if you've been in touch with Linwood about the interest groups don't have to be just in Richmond. We can have people from all over the nation and Canada. If they want to click in and join us with our interest groups, we can do that too. So lots of exciting opportunities for
That
sure.
is wonderful to know. I want to get the archives back from Ashland because there are a couple of papers that I really love and I want to get them online. The same time, yes, sitting at a dining room table and elbowing the person next to you and saying, I don't agree with that, is valuable. But also, I'm a Richmonder, I'm a very provincial on the west side of Three Chop. My map goes white and it just says Indians. And I want to grow with the Torch Club. That's it.
Great.
So,
Okay.
thank you all, because I know there's a lot of work done to figure out how to do this and to do it.
And thank you, Lynn, for putting in the word about the interest groups. If you have not contacted me that you want to belong to a particular interest group, please do that. Go to the email that I sent out on interest groups, any one of the three I sent out, and get my email address and let me know, because it's getting larger, but right now we only have 3 interest groups that I could call interest groups. The others are too small. So if you want to start your own, or just let me know and we'll work on it. Thank you.
Yeah, and Linwood's email address, in fact, all of your board's email addresses are included in your newsletter each month. There's a little box that Jane has in the newsletter that has how you can contact anyone on the board when you need to.
Pat, I had a question. And Michael Stone, we're doing back to first Tuesdays, and I haven't seen a schedule past September, and you mentioned October. The first Tuesday in November, of course, is the Tuesday after the first Monday in November, which means we're not meeting that night, are we?
No, there has been a schedule in the newsletter. If you still have the email that for the August newsletter, the schedule is in there.
Okay,
But let me just say that in November, we are meeting on the second Tuesday.
Okay.
Since the election is the first Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. I'll
No, that's okay, but that's a good thing for people to put on their calendars.
I need to acknowledge Pat, along with the rest of the board members. We've met at least once a month, and this past month every week. And it's been her leadership, and it's actually been more often than once a week this week, to make sure that everything went seamlessly and that we didn't have any glitches. And all of the practice and the time and the research, and of course, Mike's fantabulous presentation, just came off really, really well. And I want to thank Pat and the rest of the board for their leadership.
You're here.
Thank you.
Good for you, Pat.
Yeah, everyone has put a lot of time and effort into this over the summer, and it shows. I think so. I appreciate that.
And it was seamless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did go well.
Well done.
Thank you. So shall I go ahead and leave the link open until 8:30 if y'all want to chat, or are you finished? We can. Oh, Mike says he wants to have dinner.
We're hungry.
We're hungry. All right. Well,
Okay, bye-bye.
maybe we'll close this down then. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for
Goodbye.
letting me.
Great.
Yeah.
Goodbye to all.
Take care.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so
Thank you for allowing me to be a participant, I guess. Thank you.
yes, it was very nice to have our guests here. Okay, so we're going to